Hey everybody, this is the fourth here, and in this video I wanted to introduce you to a certain technique regarding reverb and delay. And this technique is to use the same reverb for all of your sounds. Using the same reverb for all of your sounds can really help them fit together better and produce a more natural sense of space in your mix. And it will also help to kind of glue them together better as well. So to take a look at this, I have this little pattern here that has a couple different sounds. And you can hear that right now they are both completely dry in terms of reverb. They have a little bit of delay, but they don't have any reverb. And they're both going through this mixer track here. And you can kind of hear that right now they don't sound like they fit together very well. You know, they both they're really dry, so they both stick out a lot. You know, there's a very good distinction between the two sounds. But you'll see if I turn this reverb on, both of these sounds will be going through this reverb, and so they will both be going through the same reverb. And this produces a good atmosphere for both of those sounds to play in and helps them sound like they go together a lot better. It kind of glues them and makes them seem like they belong together. And, you know, they don't stick out or anything. So you can hear what a difference that reverb makes. And the reason it's so powerful is because it's the same room settings basically. You know, so it's essentially putting these sounds in the same space. And if I was using a different reverb, or just different settings on the reverb between these two sounds, the gluing effect and this kind of nice atmosphere creating effect wouldn't be quite as powerful. It would still be better than them both being completely dry, but it wouldn't be quite as powerful as having them both go through the same reverb. So this is a really great thing to do. But in some cases, at the same time, it might not be the best idea to use the same exact reverb for all of your sounds. So it sounds great with these. And if I had some ambient percussion, it might sound good as well. But if I have a kind of more present drum beat, something you might dance to or whatever, it's not going to sound as good with this really nice, long, huge reverb. Yeah, you can imagine that if this were playing in a song, it wouldn't sound very good. So it does help it kind of fit with the synth sounds better. You know, everything sounds like it's in the same place. It sounds good. It sounds all glued together and all that. But at the same time, the drum beat sounds completely washed out. So for that drum beat, you're probably not going to want to use that same huge reverb. You probably will still want to use some kind of reverb, at least a little bit, on certain sounds within that drum beat. But the main thing is you're going to want a reverb that is a lot more subtle, or that has a much shorter tail. So I could do this by just copying that same reverb. and essentially just reducing the decay time. And I'd probably want to reduce the reverb amount as well. And when I play it this way, I probably need to reduce the level of those synth sounds. You can hear that even that subtle amount of reverb, I've turned it off now. When I turn it back on, it helps the sound still sound more glued together than with it completely dry without reverb on the drums. So the only parameters I've changed were really the decay and the reverb amount, which the reverb amount you'll want to change for other sounds as well, probably. So maybe I wanted less reverb on the pluck than on the kind of other sound, or maybe I wanted more reverb on the other sound than the pluck. That would be definitely a good idea to change. It's not going to change the gluing effect. You know, they're both still going to be put in the same space and it's still going to sound really good. So for your drum sounds, if you're using a really nice long reverb on your synth sounds, you could use that same reverb settings for the most part, but change the decay time and make it much shorter. Alternatively, you could use a completely different reverb that is shorter and sounds good with the drums. And as long as it sounds good and the whole mix sounds good, that's a great thing to do. I do sometimes do that, but I also do definitely like the sound that you get from kind of using the same reverb settings, but changing the decay time a little bit. And you could also play around with changing the pre-delay for certain sounds. Any sounds that you kind of want to be more upfront. So maybe I would put the pre-delay up a little bit on that drum reverb. So using the same reverb on a group of sounds can really help tie those sounds together and make them sound like they all belong together and give you a really nice sense of space. But at the same time, sometimes you might want to use a different reverb for other instrument groups especially. So maybe I have all of my, really main instrument sounds, like the pluck, that other sound. Maybe I have a background sound and some effects, and I would use the same reverb with a long tail on all of those. But then I have my whole percussion setup, and I might use either a completely different reverb that sounds better with those drums and doesn't wash them out, or I could use the same reverb and just change the decay time especially, and possibly the pre-delay as well. You could play around with the low cut and the high cut as well, but keeping the room size, the diffusion, and the color the same are going to help keep it sounding like it's in the same room. If that's what you want to do. In my tracks personally, I usually have two different reverbs. I'll have one for sounds that are more in the background or sounds that I want a nice big reverb on, and then I'll have one shorter one. Sometimes they have similar settings, but sometimes they're completely different. It just depends on what sounds good to me. And sometimes I might have a little bit of each of those reverbs on one sound. So in dubstep, for example, sometimes you'll hear those really big reverbs on your snares. And so I might mix in a little bit of that drum reverb to help tie it in with the drums. But then at the same time, I can mix in some kind of variation on the kind of more atmospheric, big reverb to help give that snare the nice, long reverb tail in the higher frequencies. So this definitely shouldn't be considered a rule, because you may get great results from using very different reverbs for different purposes in your mix. You could use a different reverb on every single sound if you wanted to and come up with an awesome result if you were paying attention and had a vision in mind or whatever. But this is just a common technique that provides a very nice gluing effect in the mix. And this is just something that I do all the time. And I find it's really helpful to make the mix sound glued and natural and all that. So play around with using the same reverb on certain groups of sounds. If you have a nice long reverb on your synth sounds, you would probably want to use a shorter reverb on your drums, either with the same settings or with different settings. But whatever sounds best to you is what you should do. And just using the same reverb on certain sets of sounds can help glue those sounds together